I think we just had a panel discussing the grid and the challenges it sees, the difficulties bringing large-scale infrastructure onto the grid in a reasonable timeline, also questions about cost and what that means for downstream reliability and affordability concerns for the users, which I think has pointed towards the need for more distributed solutions, things that can be deployed quickly, that can relieve some of that pressure on the grid, while longer-term investments of large-scale infrastructure are built. I think private investment has to play a huge role in it. Government budgets are stretched. There's only so much that a government can do to enable investment over a short period of time. So finding these sort of cost-effective solutions that can be deployed quickly and at scale is really the job of the private sector. I think there are longer-term new technologies that may be outside the purview of the private sector today that require sort of more of the government support or ultimately early-stage investments from end customers that might need those technologies in 10 to 20 years. But when it comes to investing in scale and moving quickly, I think private capital is well placed to solve those challenges. Yeah, Budderfly's model is a holistic one, primarily for the commercial market, where you have a vast array of solutions. It's not sort of one offering. It's not just solar. It's not just HVAC. It's a combination of all of it. By providing it in this manner, you can really do things quickly and provide tangible cost savings to the customer while also allowing them to focus on their core business. So as a restaurant owner, to not be in the business of having to procure new HVAC equipment, having to procure new thermostats, having to be worried about optimizing your energy costs, having somebody like Budderfly come in that will fund the upfront capital, invest in the highest efficiency equipment that has the sort of long-term payback, and provides those savings and certainty, and also just having someone that's constantly on the lookout for new technologies that, as they become more cost-effective, can be deployed quickly on your behalf and allows you to focus on your core business, whether that be a restaurant or a fitness center or any other offering. You focus on what you're doing and then have Budderfly handle the evolving energy challenges and provide those cost savings and efficiencies. I think energy efficiency tends to be a forgotten part of the overall energy landscape, which is pretty natural given it happens on the roofs, in the ceilings, and behind the walls. It doesn't lend itself to large ribbon-cutting events, but the flip side of that is it's very non-disruptive. Right? You end up with better equipment, you can have cleaner air, better lights. So it's really an awareness topic, right? I don't think a lot of the market is sitting around thinking, oh, energy efficiency is going to save me money and make my business operations more efficient. So as people see, and unfortunately people are seeing higher energy costs as utility rates go up, whether it be driven by inflation or other challenges, it's becoming more of a focus. And I think as the awareness is there and people see, this is really an important first step in terms of not just sort of how do I decarbonize, but also how do I ensure reliability of my site, how do I save costs, and how do I get back to focusing on my core business. That awareness is really critical. And so I think increasingly with the focus on the grid and reliability, people will be turning to these solutions, and they really are a critical first step. I think people tend to think more about putting on-site generation like rooftop solar, but in my mind, if you build rooftop solar before you've done energy efficiency, you're likely overbuilding. And so you're buying more panels than you might need. And it's just logical to sort of size the demand you have first by putting in place these very cost-effective measures, which in the case of Budderfly can be funded by Budderfly on the customer's behalf. And then you can move into the next solutions of how do I sort of change the generation mix or put on-site generation. I think that's just something that if it's not the core business, which for most commercial customers it's not, you don't have a large energy procurement team sitting there trying to optimize things like you might in sort of a much larger organization. It's really having the awareness of what the benefits can be so that you can take advantage and get back to focusing on your core business. I think what's important is you bring people from different backgrounds. And so I think in my panel, having somebody from a large corporate buyer of energy and technology provider, somebody from a grid operator, somebody from the cities, I think that putting it together, people can tend to get a bit siloed and see their own solutions and not necessarily see the challenges. But increasingly, as the grid becomes more and more complicated, you really do need to see sort of the full picture and what the challenges are and piece together different solutions. I think in a world where you had sort of flat load, you had sort of very low cost electricity, it's very easy to sort of just say, okay, it's working, let's keep doing. But as you have sort of increasing grid challenges, increasing costs, and just sort of questions about how you're going to meet reliability and cost considerations, it requires more nuanced thinking about sort of how do we combine different generation or storage technologies together? How do we balance sort of front of the meter versus behind the meter? How do we balance sort of physical assets versus software and tech enabled? Because you really need to piece them all together to get the optimal outcomes for them. And so having people with different perspectives and putting those together to think about what the right combinations are, I think is always helpful in terms of putting more complicated and nuanced solutions together that ultimately can provide better long-term reliability and affordability for all users of the electric grid.